see some people's hands raised. Maureen, do you have a question? Can you hear me?
Sorry, I had forgotten to turn off the hand up. You said we raise up some time back. Sorry.
No problem, no problem. Okay, so this is our content. So we are going to go through a brief intro around business proposal development, and then talk about some of the best practices from my experience, and then talk about some of the components within a business proposal, what it entails, some Q&A, quick questions and answers, and then we shall have a close. So I think I will go until point number 3, and then I'll invite either Delilah or Ethan to take over for the rest of the parts. So since this is an interactive session, I would want to hear from any of you, what do you understand as a business proposal? You could just unmute and speak or raise your hand.
I will outshare. Am I audible? Yeah. So I think a business proposal is a brief document that, in not so many words, explains what you want to do, why you want to do it, and inviting people to support it, especially in terms of finances. It should have maybe like short-term outcome, long-term outcome, target groups, a budget. Yeah, in brief.
Thank you, Micah. That was very elaborate. Anyone else? One last person?
Okay, Michael said everything, but according to me, what I had at first, a business proposal is a document where you're trying to pass on your business idea with some little details about it to different people who would be stakeholders, asking them for financial support.
All right, thank you. That's very elaborate. I was trying to see who's speaking. I couldn't. Thank you so much. So, well, I did not check up the dictionary definition, but anyway, everything I'm going to share is from my opinion, and I invite you to challenge what I have to say, what I'm sharing. So in my perspective, just like you have mentioned, a proposal is when you ask someone, or when you propose, when you suggest something to someone. So it could be a partnership, it could be that they invest in you. So you are proposing your business to someone, right? For whatever reason it is. And we shall look into depth what that is. And the reason why it is important is because, you know, when you have a business, imagine when you have a product and no one knows about the product, no one will buy that product because they do not know about it. Same case as when you have a business and you are looking for financial resources. If you cannot put across a document, if you cannot put across information about your business, no one will know about it to either contribute or even seek support from. And most of the time, people think you only write a proposal when you want to get funding, but that's not the case. You could write a proposal, a business proposal for a partnership, a strategic partnership, right? That could include or not even include financing. So there are a couple of reasons why you can put together a proposal, right? To even your clients, to suppliers. So it has a wide range of reasons to why we can develop it. And it depends on what is the intention and where do you want your business to be? And what kind of proposal, what kind of people do you need to push it forward, right? And then you tailor the business proposal in that direction, right? So I'm just going to rush through some of these slides so that we can have time for a deeper chat as we progress. So next is, I want to go through some of the best practices that I have come across through my experience when you are coming up with your business proposal. And the first and most important thing is to know who your audience is. Like I mentioned, when you know why you're writing it, right? I think the first reason is to know why you're writing it, right? And then who you are writing it to. So for example, if I want to raise funding for my impact fund, right? A fund that invests in social entrepreneurs. There are people I will look up to and there are people I might not look into, right? So the first thing, let's say I have identified a family foundation. So usually family foundations are, families that put together their resources in order to support a social cause in healthcare or in education. So I look at, the first point says, look at the projects that I've invested in before. So I look at whom have they invested in, what kind of companies, at what stage were they, right? So if there is an alignment, then I can proceed to ask myself the next set of questions, right? So that goes into understanding their mission, their focus, and even geographical locations. I have seen people waste days and hours, putting across their business proposals to the wrong, to someone who is not even investing in that geographical location, right? Or even not in the industry. So after you come up with this proposal, you've spent 3 days, you submit, and they're like, sorry, did you read our requirements or eligibility instructions? We do not invest in this geographical location. So you need to pay attention to that. And then also, you need to adapt your information to align with what they need, right? So it might be hard to do in some cases, but also possible in others. So for example, if I will try and use some of the examples of the businesses that I know or I know a bit of in the core. For example, let's say Nunu Fund is trying to reach out to, let's say, the Hilton Foundation. And the Hilton Foundation supports children to access medical services, right? So knowing that they have a focus on children, right? Albert would now, in his proposal, say, I noticed that you have an interest in supporting the needs of children, basic needs like healthcare. We support children a step further to access, education. So we would like to work with you to do this and this and this, right? And this is what we need, right? So he has aligned based on what information is there, right? So you always need to adapt. The challenge I see with many entrepreneurs is that you want to put across the same proposal, you just find a list of people, you just send them the same thing. And people notice if something is not tailor-made to their organization. And trust me, you will get more no's than maybes or even yeses. And then I think one of them is repeated here. So define your approach. So there are many ways, many approaches, and we shall look at some of the channels you can use to approach, your people you are seen as prospects to finance, to work with, right? But it's important to define your approach depending on who you are going to talk to. So for example, many foundations, right? And you will hear me refer to foundations because most of the proposals that we have worked with, or people we've worked with, are coming from foundations. So most of them have what they call unsolicited support or financing. So I mean solicited, right? So that's when they call, they say, we are looking for people who are trying to create this social impact. Please apply on our website. But then there is a point where they say, we do not want unsolicited requests, right? Or proposals. We want to first approach you and then ask you to do what? To present to us what your proposal is, right? So if you do not have a connection into that organization, chances are high that you will not be able to submit your proposal, right? Because these people cannot solicit for you because they do not know you, right? And that is why it is very, very important to build your network and invest in people, because people invest in people they trust. Think about it. The people that you give your money, that you lend, would you give your money to someone, or would you even collaborate with someone that you don't really trust, right? So that's another important element. So rushing through to the next one, have all your documents, right? So I know that these documents can have, some might be relevant and not relevant depending on the kind of business proposal you're writing. But this is an overview around usually the documents that you need. One is the business plan. Business plan gives an in-depth description of your business, and I'm going to give you an outline of a business plan much later. Sorry. Then second is a budget, right? So most of us, of course, when we write business proposals, there is a financial element to it most of the time. So you need to put in what do you need to achieve and how much do you need to achieve that. And then financial model, right? So for most of us, especially those of you that have businesses that return a profit, you need to put together a financial forecast to say, for example, if you invest this in us, in the next 3 years, we are going to increase our revenue from this to that. And we have some templates that we shall be sharing with time as we reach this point to develop these financial models that seem really complicated, but are really, really simple. Some of you have actually interacted with them, for example, Albert. And then pitch deck, right? So usually when people think of business proposals, you think of a 30-page document talking about what your business does, right? But unfortunately, many people do not read these 30 pages. They like something brief, something that will help them understand, and then they want to ask questions from there, right? So people that go ahead and hire consultants to write proposals for them, and then you do not really understand your business. Whoever you are proposing to an opportunity to partner or to even finance you, they will detect it. So you need to be able to have, a brief presentation that you can easily share that will trigger someone to want to know more. And that is what we call a pitch deck, right? And then depending on the kind of proposal, there are other documents that I could not mention everything, but an example could be they would want to see your registration documents, documents that show partnerships, for you to prove some of the claims you have within your other documents. So it's important to, have all these other documents. So I will pause here for now and see if there are any, questions or comments on anything I started with until this point.
Anthony, can you dive down a little bit more into the pitch deck and what the how that correlates into your proposal? Like maybe connect the two, or maybe give a overarching the feedback on what you've seen with pitch decks that you've looked at.
All right. So I will give you an example towards the end, something that looks like a pitch deck to help you see the overview. But you see, most of these documents, you submit them differently, right? That's what I usually do. And it's in phases, right? So for example, most recently, we approached someone for funding. And actually, we are at the point where they set up a meeting with us to know more. So the first thing we sent them was an email with our pitch deck, right? So an explanation. A pitch deck is, just a summary of your entire business in a few slides that explain the problem, and other things that I am going to mention actually towards the end, right? So it's just that summary that you put out there to trigger someone's intuition, someone's curiosity, right? That when you actually do it well, will lead to the second half of the conversation, right? So for a business proposal to be successful, usually it has phases, right? Don't expect that when you put your proposal out there, you will miraculously get financing, or you will miraculously find the funding, right? So you need to go through these different steps, right? And pitch deck will help you, make that introduction for you and facilitate the second part of the conversation, right? So I'll just check the chat to see. Okay, no questions. Right, so Ethan, I will give an example of that later on. Thank you for your question. Any other last question before I proceed? Okay. I see Delilah. Go ahead.
Hello, Edson. Hi, everyone. I'd like to just ask a quick question. I know you mentioned the documents that we may need to prepare as we are making submissions of these proposals, but I'd like to find out what are some of these key documents that we need to literally have set aside before we begin to take these little steps to make these submissions.
All right, so thank you for that amazing question. The core is to understand your business. That's the first core. So the first document, the first thing you present is yourself, right? You present yourself first, and then you need to understand your business. So the rest of the other documents, they contain, the business speaking when you're not there. So the documents that are very important to prepare, one is the business plan, the budget, the financial model, the pitch deck. And depending on what kind of opportunities that you're seeking, you need some other documents like, for example, your registration documents for your business, right? So proof of partnerships or clients, right? So sometimes they ask for audited books of accounts, right? If you're seeking, for example, investment, so there are these different documents that you might have, but the ones I think you should prioritize, have your business plan ready, have your budget, have your financial model, then have your pitch deck. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, so I'll, I see in the chat. Should it be written independently as a separate document? So when you say should it be, what is it? Julius, go ahead.
Okay, I was talking in my first message, I was trying to understand, because you said a business plan and a budget to be documents that are required. I thought a budget is included in the business plan. That's why I was asking, should the budget be written independently as a separate document, or should it be included in the business plan?
So that's a good question, right? And it depends on the approach you use. So traditional business proposals that I have seen are usually chunk documents, very huge. But the style I like to use, and which I'm going to share with you, is a few slides. I usually share my business plans within a few slides, and then usually provide a detailed budget as a separate document, because one of the principles of trying to raise funds is that you don't throw the budget at people too quick, right? You want to first get their interest. So it depends on the style that you are using. If you're capturing in a Word document and it's a detailed document, you can put your budget in there. And sometimes people even put their financial models in there, right? But my recommendation is, capture it differently. You can have a summary within the plan, but then you could also have a more detailed budget and breakdown as a separate document. So there is no right or wrong answer here. It's just the approach. That's what I would think. And so I'll just, move on, and then we shall get back to any more questions you have. Just keep throwing them within the chat, right? So another important best practice to have is when trying to raise funds and write your winning proposal is that you need to build credibility, right? So credibility is why should people trust you, okay? And I have just here a few points. Building credibility is it's a subject on its own. We talk about it for hours. But the three things I see is, one, you need to have traction. You need to do something, So when you have an idea and you haven't implemented, you have not done any research at all, you have not done any survey, you just have an idea that you sat down and cooked, and now you're looking for funding, you're looking for partnerships. Chances are high that it will be very difficult for you. So I am an investment lead at Sinach. We invest in social entrepreneurs. So when people do not have traction, no matter how beautiful your idea is, chances are high we shall not even spend an hour, 5 minutes looking at it, because you do not really understand your business until you start to, until rubber meets the road, right? You need to do something, okay? So those of you here with ideas and you haven't, done market research, something to prove that the business works, you will find it hard to get that credibility for someone to trust, to work with you, to finance you, right? So one element that you actually need to have within your business proposal is the traction. This is what we have done so far. We have interviewed, confirmed, and did this. We have built these products. We have sold to this amount of people. We have these pre-orders, that structure. And then second, you need to build your social media presence. So most of the high-value professional network are on LinkedIn, right? So if you went to my Instagram, you'll be very disappointed. If you went to my Facebook, I forgot my password. It's now 6 months, I think, since I logged in. But if you go to my LinkedIn, chances are high that I really update it often, because that's the Facebook, that's the Instagram for usually the professional network. And you need to keep it up to date and clean. So those of you that do not have, LinkedIn accounts, I'm challenging you to find out what LinkedIn is, and then also, look up some of the people in this call, people that you look up to professionally. Look at the structure of their accounts and set up one. So my name is Edson Nwamanya. You can check out my LinkedIn as well. And then, collaborate with others. So in the spirit of traction, right? When you collaborate with others, you multiply your impact, you multiply your skills, your experiences, right? So many of you, when you're at idea stage, I really advocate or suggest that you work with people doing something similar to what you want to do, right? And these are things you can record within your business proposal. So it's important to collaborate and co-implement with others. So I'll just, rush through to the next slide. And where to find funding, right? This is something that usually gets people's interest. Can we get the money? So one is competitions. I am often applying for these competitions, of course, that are relevant to our impact fund that I currently work with, right? So for example, one of them is the Tony Elmelo Foundation, right? So you come and compete with other youth to get 5,000, unrestricted funding, right? I don't know if it's unrestricted or, yes, something like that. So there are competitions, there are websites that you can go and access these opportunities that could be relevant. And then second is foundations. But these might come in at a later stage when you have built some traction in the business and you are seeking, bigger ticket sizes of money and capital, right? You might then approach family foundations like the Clinton Foundation, there's the GDS Foundation, many others, depending on whom they focus on. And then second is accelerators and incubators like Shift Ventures. So we have our program, and at some moment, some of you will be able to access capital from there, and you might need to present these documents that I was talking about earlier. Then, in the videos, you can prepare and share these documents to, well-wishers. They could be someone who is, wealthy, high net worth individual that you know personally or that is within your network. It could even be angel investors, right? People who have invested in others before. Crowdfunding, please, if you meet a term here and you do not know what it is, you can ask in the chat, and if anyone has an idea, you could just, quickly respond, and then, towards the end of the Q&A, I can elaborate more on those who want more information. And then, venture capital. Now, this is more institutional capital, where you can, access bigger ticket sizes, so pre-seed, seed capital to, grow and scale your business, right? And some of these documents are actually mentioned. You need to have them. And then strategic partnerships, right? So this is not a conventional one. Most people don't think about it, but I'll give you an example. So let me pick, Julius. Julius wants to work with farmers. So Julius can say, I'm going to work with the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. It's an international organization. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to propose to them to extend some of their work into maybe the area in which I operate if they do not have footprint there. So you request for maybe funding, resources, and personnel, right, to do that under your organization. So you draft up a partnership proposal and they finance the activities, right, which you can then report as impacts for you, right? So there are a couple of ways, there are very many that you can raise funding, using this proposal. So please, more questions, please put them in the chat. I'm almost, just rounding up and then we engage. So one of the most important documents, right? And most people call the business plan a business proposal, right? Which could be the case, right? It's just a matter of language. But I usually like to expand the business proposal into something much bigger. And that's why I added all the other documents before. But critical things to have within your business plan, these are some of the components, right? And I'll just go to the next page and elaborate more of those, right? So number one is the problem statement, also what we call as, what is the impact potential of the business, right? But call it problem statement. So this, you need to explain, what's the depth of the problem, how big is the problem, right? And then, these are just a few points that you might consider, and we shall share these slides, while, for example, defining what your problem is, right? And then, the value proposition, what do you offer, right? How is it unique, right? Proof of concept, what have you done to prove that this exists? How can it scale, right? The revenue model, especially for those of you that are doing businesses. How do you make money? Who buys from you? Why do they buy from you? Do you have some traction that I mentioned earlier? Target market and customers, right? Their willingness to pay, the market size, customer segments, right? So for those of you that are within the SHIFT program, we are going to actually have a deep dive into some of these, and by the end of the program, you guys will actually have business plan based on these components, right? Then we have the competitive, advantage. Who else is, doing this, and why are you better, right? And then we have, go-to-market strategy. How do you sell? Is it through direct channels? Is it through partners? The channels you use, and then we have the team and partners who are the people that you collaborate with, and then the key financials, right? So you can actually, within the financial model, you can extract some of these things and put within the business plan. Just a screenshot, for example, of the profit and loss statement. And then, why do you need the money? The investment opportunity, right? When we get this money, we're going to use it this way, right? These are the returns we expect. These are the risks, okay? And then finally, what are your goals? What are the next steps? What are some of the achievements that you have had in the past? And how are those reflecting onto your ambition or possibilities? In the future, right? So let me just pause there again to get some questions, comments, and then I will just give an example, and then we go into the Q&A. So please raise your hands if you have questions. I will also be watching the ones in the chat. Hands, any hands? Okay, so let me just approach the ones in the chat.
And I believe there's one in the chat. Julia says, can you give more light on point number 8? The key financials. So it's Julius is asking about key financials.
Right. So the key financials are what is the most important financial data, and we usually do that using the financial model, right? The financial model is a financial forecast of the future, right? So what is the current situation, right? And for those of you that are curious, I think we have people here like Micah, like Albert, that have actually created these financial models and understand them, right? And we shall dive into it, I think, in the future. So, for example, when you create a financial forecast for the next 3 years, right? One of the outputs within this model is a profit and loss statement, talking about what's the potential for profitability for you within the next 3 years. And you can extract this profit and loss statement and then actually put it within your business plan, right? And there's some jargon in there, but it's actually very, very simple. What are the key financial information? What is the key financial information that affects your business that you would want maybe investors to know, right? If you invest 10,000 into our business, this is how it's going to impact us. And by the end of 2028, we shall be making revenue or net income of $100,000 US, $1 million US, right? So this is the key financial data that affects you in simple terms. Any other questions? Or yes, if I'm not entirely answered, just ask me a follow-up question.
So add just briefly to what Edson said about those key financials. And Mike, I think you might be unmuted. Maybe you're about to talk, but it's a little background noise. Like, for example, Julius, you were there at Launchpad in Eastern Uganda, where I drew that large chart where we literally, for example, I gave you a number for the amount your budget might be. And then you literally had to forecast over a period of, I think it might have been 6 months, how the money would be spent. So for example, Julius, if you were doing a financial forecast for your staff and you knew you were going to pay yourself 5 million shillings per month, then that would mean over 12 months, you would have made 60 million shillings. And so then let's say you have 3 other employees, one's at 3 million, one at 1 million. So the financial forecast basically says it's like your monthly budget added up into 1 year and then forecasted out for other years. And maybe you add 3% increase for certain aspects of the budget. But I think Edson, this particular slide right here could really be an entire presentation. So I think this is a good one you guys should screenshot, and maybe we'll come back around and do more training on just this, what's here. But I think there's also more questions in the chat.
Right. That's something we can definitely talk about in depth. If it's a topic you're interested in, there will be a survey at the end. Ethan, I hope it includes that question. What topics would you like to dive deeper into that have been triggered by the conversation? Let's see. I have another question. How do I protect my idea from being stolen? Because those of intellectual property were built here, and no one can get compensated for an idea that is stolen. So, intellectual property is a very, very important topic. And it depends, right? So I'm just going to share my opinion as an individual, and the opinion I'm saying does not reflect on what Shift is, or if Shift believes in that, or any partners that I'm associated with. So as an early stage business, for me, I think there are things that you need to worry about with your business and not your intellectual property, depending on the kind of business it is, right? If you have a product or service, right, there are things that you need to prove first before you can focus on the intellectual property. So one, for me, you need to prove that there is a market for the product that you have, right? There is interest from customers. You need to do your market research. You need to have your product out there in the market, right? And people need to adopt it, right? They need to show the willingness to adopt it by activation, the willingness to pay, right? So if you prove those and you're actually bringing in revenue, right, and there is a risk of this idea being stolen, then you can actually go ahead and pursue that in whatever geographical scope that you want to focus on for your intellectual property. But I would suggest, and this is a general comment, I don't know your individual circumstances, I would suggest that focusing on protecting your business and not sharing it is the wrong approach to going through business, especially when you're an early stage entrepreneur. So I recommend that tell people about your business, right? Allow them to criticize it, allow them to give you feedback, and only pursue intellectual property at a later stage, if indeed your business is worth protecting, right? But think of the businesses that exist in the world and how many intellectual properties exist. Not that many, right? So focus on the core of your business, make revenue, scale the business model, right? Because competition will come either way, whether you have your patent or not. So that's my opinion as an individual. I'm happy to hear different opinions. Someone to disagree, someone to agree. All that is okay. So that's my opinion. I think you can just share your reflection on that or anyone else in the chat. So I'll just go ahead and conclude with an example. Right. Okay, saying my screen sharing is paused. So I'll just stop sharing first and then reshare the screen I want to share.
While you're doing that, Edson, one thing I would add about IP is that I used to feel the same way, even about like Shift and the idea and the Shift curriculum. I'm like, man, I don't want to submit this because someone could take it. But I think my philosophy or my opinion is now the abundant mentality, knowing that no matter what someone does, it can never be exactly like what I'm doing. Like there's no idea out there that sits on an island and you're the first person ever in the history of mankind to create it. So I think in the spirit of abundance, I think the question came from someone with a legal background. So she might even be able to provide some insights into how she formed that question. But I think you have to let it rip. You have to let it go. And let the cards fall where they may. That obviously you want to do that with some sort of wisdom, but that would be my opinion on protecting your IP. Is you kind of got to let it rip, but definitely be smart about it.
Yes, thank you for that addition. So I want to just give you an example of everything I've been talking about. This is a slide that me and my team created. These are some of the slides that contain some of the things I was talking about, right? So this is the organization where I'm spending most of my time. It's called The Purposeful, and we invest in social entrepreneurs in underserved markets. Right. So let's go and run through the slides. So this is the executive summary of what's everything within the slides, right? And their slides, it's not a 100-page document. I'm not going to go through everything, but you can see we have a problem statement, right? Which talks about financial system being really broken functionally and morally. Capital is not reaching the people that it needs to, right? People with access to capital are those that can easily access it, but not those that need it, right? And I talk about the opportunity, the value proposition, how we are closing this financing gap for social entrepreneurs, right? So there's a theory of change in there. There's the impact, there's our portfolio, our future, our need, and the team, right? So there are elements that I mentioned earlier that are not in here because it's, just a summary. It's a simple document. So I explained the problem here, right? The systemic, the demand side, the supply side of the problem. I want you to focus on the structure of this. This is actually our business plan. It's not a pitch deck. It's our business plan because pitch decks usually have much less information, right? They are simple, right? But this has information. If I send you this, chances are high you almost understand the whole thing, right? Then we have our opportunity there, right? Talking about the number of, the population in East Africa, right? The population growth rate, the number of businesses that fail. 63 of SMEs failed by the third year, right? And you can see these are facts. You need to have facts in, when you state the problem. And the sources are here. So these are not made up facts, right? The opportunity, the business opportunity, or the problem statement, right? Our value proposition, what do we offer, right? So Purposeful closes the financing gap for social entrepreneurs in our sub-communities. How? So through peer-to-peer selection, revenue-based payback, ticket sizes between $5,000 to $50,000, and then social entrepreneurs in the sub-markets are the people that we serve, right? So we talk about the investment model. Seems a bit complex, right? But that's how our investment model works, right? We talk about now our competitive advantage, right? How? By talking about what are the existing alternatives to access to capital, right? So there is equity and there is debt. And the model that we use lies in the middle. As you can see, it's positive. This one has negative here, right? It brings together the strengths of the two systems, right? So this is more like our competitive advantage and how we talk about it compared to traditional financing mechanisms. The theory of change, right? We believe if we provide this, these people, this will happen and that will happen and, ultimately contribute to a world that works for all, right? So if you read this, you would understand it. Talk about our impact, to date, right? Look at our portfolio of people that we have invested in. We look at the future. We look at our need that includes our financial needs. They are written in here, right? So explain where you are, where you want to be. And then the operational team that I work with. And then, close, I think this one was a bit of a repetition, but close powerfully by a quote, right? So this is actually our, we call it a 10-page business plan, right? So I'll just, quickly go back to the slides. I know I've thrown too much information on you guys. I appreciate the patience, right? So yes, let me just, wrap up some of the things that, we have gone through. Content, right? So we talked about the best practices, right? What you need to consider while trying to write down the business proposal, trying to raise funds to build strategic partnerships, right? And then we talked about the key components, especially of the business plan, because it's the core, right? It explains what your business is and actually can contain all this other information, right? So let's take, I would either want to invite Ethan to facilitate or Delilah the Q&A so that I know it's almost close to the end for us. You can get that done. Ethan?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Edson, for the presentation. I'm going to pass it over to Delilah. She may have a pointed question to get us started. And then for other folks, if you have a question for Edson, drop it in the chat and we'll open the floor up. But Delilah, if you can lead us off, if you have something that's maybe pressing, you could throw at Edson to help him dive deeper into any topic that he talked about today.
Thank you, Edson. Thank you, Ethan. I'd like to quickly dive back into the issue of intellectual rights. I understand for sure that at least in Uganda, it's not something very prominent, and people do not think of it as something very important, but I've seen advocates coming out to say we need this. And I believe it's something applied for things like IT, management information systems. And now I'm wondering, why are we still lagging? What is the gap? And what can we possibly do to make this possible for people like artists? How do we protect a business such as that?
Well, okay, you can hear me. So I'll put out a disclaimer first. I am by no means an expert in intellectual property, and there are very many people out there that can speak about it better than I can. But I will speak for only a niche of people, or speak to a niche of people, that is social entrepreneurs. If you're an entrepreneur out there and you have an idea, right? You have not yet started, you have not yet implemented it, right? And if it's not even coming from research, I would advise you to focus on testing this idea first before pursuing the journey of intellectual property. And for creatives out there, right? I think if this is a topic of interest, Ethan, I think we can have someone to dive deeper into that. But I think for any entrepreneur out there, and you're building a product that you think is going to work for people, at least first go through the first phase of proving that this is something that people really need, right? And trust me, most of the ideas you have, people have done those things, right? It's usually not about, the idea, it's about the implementation, right? Who is implementing it and how? That makes the difference, right? And that is why I encourage entrepreneurs not to get into the conversation of intellectual property very early, unless you're rooted in research, right? That would be my answer.
I think I was looking at the chat just to close up the IP thing and maybe get one more question before we get out of here. Lucretia posed the question about IP, and I think she just followed up and said she's talking about if I could develop my proposal and present it to an investor, but then he or she turns around and they use my proposal for their own gain. And I actually have an experience like that proposing a project back home in real estate. And what I learned, Lucretia or others, is that a non-disclosure agreement, that is something that is binding. That if you say, hey, look, I'm going to tell you about this idea, but you can't talk about it, you can't do anything similar to this in the next, for example, 2 years. And if that person does, infringe on that NDO, then I'm sorry, NDA, my man, I put NDA, then you can take legal actions there. So that would be my last bit on that. Before we get out of here, Edson, maybe one more question. I'll open the floor up, and then I have an announcement to make at the end because we want to actually do a business writing proposal. I'm sorry, a business proposal writing workshop actually tomorrow. But I'll give you more details on that after we open the floor up for one more question that might come from Delilah or it might come from someone else that's here.
Any last questions?
Okay, so I'm a speak now, forever hold your peace kind of guy. So with that being said, again, thank you, Edson, for the time and for the insights. And so, guys, those that are here, and I'll send out a message to the rest of the crew and the community. Well, tomorrow at the same time, I'm actually going to lead a workshop on writing a proposal. We're going to leverage the usage of AI. So ChatGPT, I'm going to show you how you can leverage a tool like ChatGPT to help you write up your proposal in a way that maybe you didn't think you could write before. I found that quite a few people don't use that tool. So I want to show you how it can be used to generate content and proposals. And so we'll do that tomorrow at the same time. Last thing, and I know some people have left, that's okay. If you're still here, I want to share this. I can't even, what's wrong with my screen? Let me see if it'll let me share this. Yeah, so in the chat, there's a forms document. It's just a for you to give feedback. You can do it now while you sit here with us, or you can do that here in the next 5, 7, 8 minutes from where you are. But we'd like to get some feedback to better understand what else you might want to learn about, give Edson some feedback on his overall presentation. But please, ma'am, sir, Victoria, Albert, LaQuisha, Julius, and others that have left, I'll send it to them. Click on that link and do that quick form to give us some feedback as we keep growing the community here in East Africa. But again, Edson, thank you so much. I'll give you the last word. Maybe one bit of maybe a golden piece of advice, I don't know, or something you can give the community around the idea of developing proposal that could potentially get them the funding they need.
So first of all, this was, I would call it a summary. Right? It would be an insight into how to start, right? And, developing the mindset of writing proposals that way. That's what this session was about. So my encouragement would be that, go out there and start developing the first proposal, right? Because my experience has taught me that while you are developing your proposal, that's when it gets to start to understand your business much better, to start to see opportunities you have not explored, right? So it needs to first be an internal document and then an external document, right? To drive your strategy, to drive and help you achieve your goals. This is the most important reason to start, the process of writing down the business proposal. So I'm happy that all of you attended. It was really exciting to hear some questions. You had some really hard questions, and I look forward to contributing to your journey. Please, if you have any questions, forward them through the different channels, even through Ethan, and I'll be helping to approach them. Thank you for the opportunity.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And for those that are in the Ventures program, please utilize Edson. He has put the link in our group chat to have a one-on-one with him. So Albert, Julius, if you guys go back in our chat and scroll up and go ahead and get a 30-minute session with Edson to help you develop, a proposal. For everyone else, you have me and Edson too, but once you get to Ventures, you can have access to Edson. Thank y'all so much. I'm going to end the call. Feel free to please, ma'am, please, sir, complete that exit survey for us. And we'll see you tomorrow if you're available. I'll be doing a leveraging artificial